Like Derek said, I'm Nick Ramirez, and I'm an outreach prevention specialist, and I work with Nabil at Recovery Resources doing gambling prevention. And at Recovery Resources, we offer both gambling prevention and treatment services. We work with many agencies, businesses, and organizations, and those in the community, educating them on responsible gambling and problem gambling. So Bill McGovern is a Gam-Anon member and an advocate in recovery, in a recovery journey from a personal loss due to problem gambling since 2013. He retired after 25 years with a Fortune 500 industrial corporation, where for 20 years he was directing customer service and support. And Jesse Stewart is an advocate and a former board member of the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio. He has served on multiple committees and has been a speaker at various events, including the 2019 Ohio Conference. He's here today to discuss the importance of advocacy to find opportunities for the possible use of them by those in prevention and treatment. And I've had the pleasure of speaking with both of them, and they're both very passionate and very kind people. So I'm excited to hear what they have to say.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome. My name is Bill McGovern, and as Nick said, I'm a Gam-Anon member and advocate in recovery journey from personal loss due to problem gambling. Hopefully you can see my screen. I'm sharing just a couple of slides as we go through today. If I can advance it 1 second. And it's not advancing for me.
Bill, maybe try to X out of it and come back into it.
All right, 1 second. Lovely. You know, this worked before.
Absolutely. Just want to thank everyone for their patience. Obviously, with Zoom comes many technical difficulties, so bear with us just a moment.
Yeah, for some reason I can't get.
You want to try to just X out of it and bring it back up the way we did before?
Yeah, I just did that.
Okay. You'll have to reshare though through the Zoom.
Right. And with any luck, it will come up here in a moment. Somewhere on this vast network of it is in here somewhere. Wow, I'm wasting a lot of time. I'm really sorry.
Okay, I can go ahead and share it from my end, Bill, and then
Okay.
So let me just go ahead and bring it up, and I'll share it from my end, and then.
Okay, so I'm not sharing right now, right?
Nope, I can take care of it though.
All right, sorry about that. Thanks. Well, rough start there. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to take another moment to recognize the Cleveland music icon, Michael Stanley, who passed away on March 5th of 2021, as the city of Cleveland issues its proclamation of March 25th, which would have been his 73rd birthday, as Michael Stanley Day. I'd like to just take a moment to listen to a clip of My Town, which is being broadcast throughout the streets of Cleveland at this moment from the Rock Hall. So just a clip, just a tease. I think the guy was a really moving force in the town and the community and the music world. So just a brief tribute there. To cut back to recap the conference program, many of you have actively participated in Mental Health and Problem Gambling Awareness Month on the PG&O conference journey and its 4 phases, which I thought was really well put together. The progress that's occurred, the collaboration, the innovations, and now you get to hear a little bit about support. I'd like to thank you for your participation and efforts, and I'm sure you'll reap the benefits of the conference. I'd also like to thank Jess Stewart here, Nick Ramirez of Recovery Resources, Gam-Anon, Problem Gambling Network of Ohio, for the opportunity to speak with you today. But especially thank you for being here today. I'm here today because it's important to me to share with you my experience and why. Corey, if you could share the first poll question.
And Bill, I have shared that.
Okay, so I'm curious, you've got more than 80 people on here. If you would just tell me what's your primary role? We'll give you a few moments and then give the results. Very good, nice mix of folks there with, let's see, counseling and prevention leading the charge with administrative, regulatory, and public following. So I guess I fall into public, but I'm not able to vote. So thank you for our participation there. So my story, it was the summer of 2013 that my wife Andrea and I learned of our son's problem gambling. It was so sudden and severe that before we could react, he had attempted suicide. We may never recover. Our lives were changed forever. We quickly learned about GA and Gam-Anon. We met many very good resources, professionals, support groups, addicts, advocates, and survivors. We had been familiar with 12-step programs and the benefits of that GA program. We became immersed in the program along with our son, Mike, Hurricane McGovern. He worked his program and we worked ours. It's life-changing. He earned his 30-day PIN. He earned his 90-day PIN. We kept to our program and supported him in his. Then the wheels came off. The series of most unfortunate threatening conditions changed for Mike that Christmas of 2013. His program and relationships spiraled out of control. He cut off contact with family and friends, stopped going to GA, went to the casino, binge gambled, and on January 17, 2014, at age 28, completed suicide at our home that cold, rainy evening because he had lost hope in his support network and the pain he had endured for the previous 3 weeks was too much to bear any longer. We didn't see it coming. We believed in the program. It was working, or so it seemed. We had not been prepared to face the facts and statistics that 5 in 100 gamblers are problem gamblers, and 1 in those 5 will complete suicide. Staggering numbers. What could I do? How do I continue? Can I continue? Why would I want to? I learned quickly that impact the loss of Mike, a problem gambler, had on us and our community, his huge number of friends and acquaintances. Despite the fog of my grief and the wrestling match with the stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, guilt, despair, and acceptance, I had to act, stay busy, embrace the condition, and engage with the support offered. Thank you, God, for all the advocates that supported us. We returned to the Gam-Anon program, not because we had a problem gambler in the adjacent room, because it was my turn to live out step 12. Despite our tragic story, others need to hear what problem gambling can lead to. Offer hope in the face of staggering odds, if only to change or save the life of one other person. I can't change my past. I can certainly be a vocal advocate to others facing strange, unfamiliar territory and point them to the network of groups and professionals available in the community. If you could go to slide 4, Corey. I didn't fully appreciate the art of advocacy, so I had to investigate it. I found in the Merriam-Webster's definition of advocate, public support for a recommendation of a particular cause or policy. Not very satisfactory in my view, so I had to dig deeper. And what I found was advocacy can be defined as the act of arguing or pleading for something, most commonly a cause, idea, or movement. Citizen advocacy is the term used to define the action of a citizen undertaking unpaid long-term support for a vulnerable person, ensuring that that vulnerable person's interests and opinions are heard. The purpose of advocacy is to promote or reinforce a change in policy, program, or legislation. Rather than providing support directly to clients or users of services, advocacy aims at winning support from others, that is, creating a supportive environment. There are 3 types of advocacy: self-advocacy, individual advocacy, and systems advocacy. A new reference that I uncovered in the last year is an article by Mike Venny, who writes in the NAMI Advocate Fall 2020, Ways to be a more effective mental health advocate, where he brings out 3 significant points: educate people, create space for conversations, and touching hearts. I found this very supporting. This made sense from the madness I found myself in. I could do this. Plead for support to the vulnerable. Act in their interest. Give them a safe, non-judgmental support environment till the compulsion passed, and they might be able to return to their support or recovery program. I knew firsthand the incidental impact problem gambling can have on the wider community. I wouldn't be silent. I felt compelled to share the story and the path to recovery. Drop the anonymous and be brave, almost fearless of any stigma. Could there be worse consequences than losing a child, or a friend, or a family member? Yes, there is. Not being outspoken and bottling it up doesn't improve the situation for anyone. It's a hard story, but it is the opportunity to educate and collaborate. I take my message into my community, my workspace, my parish, my family, my friends. Most important in this advocacy vocation, remind them that they are not alone, and recovery is possible, and treatment works. In dispelling the myths and misconceptions, as an audience of care professionals, you as counselors, social workers, gaming operators, regulators, researchers, policymakers, recovery advocates, if you found yourself at risk, who would you reach out to? What would prevent you from reaching out? Having been active in Chrysalis, a support group in the Lake County Adams Board, Compassionate Friends, Franklin County Loss, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Gam-Anon, and Men's Fellowship, I have heard many express their concerns about stigma and the fear and anxiety that it imposes and actually blocks and prevents them from getting needed support or being allowed to grieve, openly expressing their emotions. I was and continue to be astonished at how the sympathetic ear of a trusted advocate can free that person, that go-to person, when there wasn't a scheduled meeting, or the medical appointment isn't for 2 more days, or the meds won't be available for pickup for a few more hours, or the helpline isn't available until Monday morning. Although the helpline has improved significantly, as you heard earlier in the week, about the professionals that are staffing on the helpline. An advocate isn't necessarily a paid professional, and often they don't even have to speak to lend support. They are often that bridge in low periods till the next professional steps are available. The benefit of an advocate could be enough to halt a compulsive gambler temporarily, or even be life-saving if they are planning to harm themselves or someone else. You can go to slide 6, please. What would joining forces look like? In my experience, joining forces was like stitching a patchwork quilt to the various resources in my network circle, radiating outward as each patch extended to more resources from its network. It was all about community for me. The public ones, professionals, religions, care providers, first responders, family, friends, work associates. I found American Foundation of Suicide Prevention and Recovery resources and others to be very supportive in developing my advocacy. The Adams Board of Lake County and the Suicide Prevention Coalition helped us develop and deliver my personal story. Compassionate Friends was there for shared experiences and peer support. AFSP Out of the Darkness program allowed us to channel our resources toward education and awareness advocacy and legislative changes, the most recent of which is the addition of the 988 three-digit hotline, which was enacted into law in October of 2020. Recovery Resource in Gamanon was supportive and another outlet for the personal story, data, and communication. PG&O and the helpline allow us to assist with monitoring, evaluation, and action. Franklin County Loss introduced us to national and local resources, lived experiences, and access to those in need. These are only a few of the steps in my journey that have led to getting professionals connected with clients, building, strengthening the grassroots support network, connecting for collaboration, that's education, programs, and funding, destigmatize language. Words matter. This is one of the most powerful brochures that I have been introduced to, and it's readily available. What hurts, what helps. What we say these days is very impactful. Educating interested parties. And in my case, that was first responders. So being supportive in the importance of setting expectation of what happens in the first hour or the first day or those 72-hour 3-day period and the first week, that initial fragile time. In closing, that first contact, how will that go? What if they have to wait? Am I able to address the right issue? Is it the addiction or self-harm? I see my role as the neighborhood patrol, being credible, easy to reach, accessible, visible, approachable, non-judgmental. I have limited experience with recognizing the signs. I am outspoken on the topic to be the voice, and it gives me a sense of purpose. And in another sense, a traffic cop able to direct a person or family in need toward the best resource for their issue or situation. Corey, if you could give me the third poll question. Are advocates part of the equation in dealing with problem gambling, in your view? And we'll give you 20 seconds to check a box. Meanwhile, enjoy the silence. A resounding yes. I appreciate that. It really means a lot to the community. I'd like to thank you all again for your time to attend today. You are making a difference, one person at a time, one day at a time. There is hope for the problem gambler. Bless you. So if there are any questions, this would be a good time. Or I would like to offer a more uplifting story from my friend, Jess Stewart.
Thank you, Bill. Um, our roles as advocates is to inform and educate. And our desire is to make the public aware of just how dangerous this addiction is. As I like to put it now, we try to prevent heartache before it happens. You just heard a story of how Bill lost his son 5 years ago. I contemplated suicide myself. And it's only by God's grace that I'm still here today and was able to celebrate my 27th anniversary last week. A lot of people ask me why I got involved with advocacy. You just heard a great story of one of the reasons why. I'm approximately 5 years into my recovery from problem gambling, and I want to make certain, if at all possible, that others don't go down the road that I went. My role in journey into gambling started young. I was 6 years old when my father first introduced me into gambling. I lost my mother at the age of 17, and gambling, as it turned out, became a coping mechanism. It was my uplifting, my high to the depression that I began to suffer with. For nearly 50 years, gambling controlled me. It led me down a very dark road, a road that included 3 years in prison. You would think that that would be enough to change someone. Well, as I found out, gambling is just as prevalent in prison as it is in society. A lot of people just don't realize that gambling is an addiction. They tend to believe that it is a moral failure. And we have to change that mindset of the public, because problem gambling is a disease. It's not a moral failure. If you're addicted to alcohol or drugs or food or sex, they will say you need help. However, when you have a gambling problem, they're often telling you, just stop. And that is something that is absolutely contrary to the facts, because a person with a gambling problem can no more stop than an individual who has a drinking problem or a drug problem. It's not a physical substance that you can drink or ingest or take into your body, yet it can be more deadly, it can impact more deeply, and destroy lives more quickly than you can imagine. The losses can be enormous, and it can happen very quickly. Corey, if you would put up that very first slide. This was one of the earliest slides that I came across that ORG and them created. Gambling is all fun and games until. Well, for 90% of Ohioans who can gamble responsibly, they don't have to worry about this. But for the 10% who cannot gamble responsibly, potentially, this was very appropriate, because it basically spelled it out for me. Until you borrow money, which I did, until all you think about is gambling, which was true, until you lie about it, until you hurt your friends and family. To take control of problem gambling before until happens. For the 10% who fall into that category, it's often too late, and it comes too late. it seems to me that we are constantly swimming against the current or climbing a steep hill, oftentimes, as we rarely control the narrative or direction that an interview or even a personal story takes place. So raising awareness is the goal. So we take each small victory as it comes. And I just want to thank PG&O and Ohio for Responsible Gambling for the wonderful conference that they've put on this month, and for the opportunities that was presented to me all throughout the month to do newspaper stories, TV, radio. It's the most opportunities that I've had in a long time. And I'm just grateful that they really went above and beyond this month to put all this together. And I certainly appreciate it. I believe we need more advocates that with lived experience to tell people what this disease does who are caught up in it, because gambling isn't going to go away. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's expanding all across the country. And here in Ohio, it will soon do the same. Gamblers will find a way to feel their need for action. And I wanted to basically go back and say, look at what happened when COVID-19 closed all the racinos and casinos in Ohio. Did gambling stop? Not at all. In fact, lottery instant ticket sales went through the roof, and a large majority of gamblers went online. Data from one site showed a 60% increase in new accounts from Ohio. So fast forward to when the casinos reopened for business in 2020. Although they were operating at 25 to 50% capacity, revenue was running near or above the numbers prior to the shutdown. Hollywood and Toledo saw huge increases. And one of the first things that I thought was, why did that happen? Well, casinos in Detroit were still shut down. People were coming down from Michigan to Toledo to gamble. I want to get specific here for just the 4 casinos in Ohio for the months of July through October. In 2019, at full capacity, using all their tables and slot machines, their revenue combined was $278 million. Fast forward to 2020, during that same time period, with the capacity controls in place, using only 2/3 of their tables and 2/3 of their slots, the revenue was $310 million. That's an 11% increase year over year, using 1/3 less tables and slots and capacity control. The numbers speak volumes to me. How about you? 278 million increased to 310 million. 11% using 1/3 less tables and slots. As far as the racinos go, I don't have totals on the specific numbers, but I can tell you that theirs increased by 4%. Not as much as the casinos, but an increase either way. So, as an advocate, what advice would I give, or do I give, to other problem gamblers? Because this is not unique to them. They're not alone. But the first thing I would do is let them know that free help is available. That they should seek counseling, because this is not a problem that they are able to overcome on their own. I tried multiple times and wasn't able to do so. It was only when I went through inpatient treatment that I got the result desired. I encouraged them to sign up for the voluntary exclusion program if they're a casino gambler. I suggest that if they're an online person that they get Gamban. It's the best $35 they will spend, and it'll certainly save them a lot of money in the long term. I tell them about the Ohio Problem Gambling Helpline. I encourage them to build a support network such as GA, etc. Gamblersinrecovery.com, which has meetings available 24/7, 365 days a year. I share my story for the specific purpose of it's not about me, it's about others. My story is a dark one. I don't want to see others go through what I went through. I tell my story to anyone who is willing to listen. And the reason I do that is it's not a fair playing field out there. I saw the question was, how much was it in 2019 before the increase? It was $278 million for the 4 casinos during that same 4-month period in 2019. And in 2020, it was 310 million. The American Gaming Association and sports betting companies like FanDuel and DraftKings uses every media source available to promote gambling. Social media, radio, TV, print. They saturate you with it on a daily basis. Video game manufacturers are targeting the gamblers of tomorrow through gaming designed to make you buy product in order to advance within the games or to better your chances of winning. Free online casino games gives you better odds of winning in hopes that you will start paying to play online. They'll tell you about its entertainment and having fun, when in reality, it all comes down to separating all who partake of it from their money. Now, people have a right to spend their money however they choose, but there's that 10% out there who cannot gamble responsibly. They're targeting the youth of tomorrow's, which will, in hopes that they will become the gamblers of the future. Ohio is facing gambling expansion likely this year. And we need to be prepared for that. And here's why. For the last 3 months of 2020, I worked at an inpatient gambling treatment center, the same center that gave me my life back. I worked with the patients on the gambling unit on a daily basis. And I took away some specific things from that that's going to play a role here in Ohio. When I was a patient there in 2016, the demographics was primarily male, some females, but primarily male. The clients tend to be older. And the gambling was pretty much all casino gambling. Fast forward to 2020, when I was up there working with the patients, the demographic changed substantially. They were younger, many in their mid to late 20s and early 30s. It was a fairly even mix of male and female. Females were specific for the most part to addictions for slot machine gambling. The men were younger, as I said, and were primarily due to online gambling, sports gambling, and those that were delving into the stock market, particularly things like Robinhood, which has certainly come to fruition the last few months with what's been going on with certain stocks. These individuals were coming from all across the country. They weren't just from Minnesota. They were from Florida. They were from New York. They were from Michigan. They were from states that have just started recently into sports betting. That concerns me a lot with what will happen when sports betting comes to Ohio. So we need to be cognizant of what's going on elsewhere, because that is very likely going to be a similar pattern that we see here. I'm happy to be back in Ohio. I was certainly happy to be very involved this month with problem gambling awareness. I want to give you one other specific piece of data in regards to the impact of casinos relating to when they first arrived. In the first 2 years after casinos arrived in Gulfport, Mississippi, suicides increased by 213%. In neighboring Biloxi, Mississippi, suicide attempts increased by 1,000% in the first year alone. Suicides, like what Bill's son suffered, and he's had to deal with the loss of his son. We don't hear a lot about that. And the reason being, it's usually more of a private thing. But there are some studies that are out there and data that I came across relating to suicides and problem gambling. And based upon that data taken from a variety of sources, a conservative estimate puts annual completed suicides of problem gamblers in a range of 12,500 to 18,500 a year. Now, crunching those numbers down further on a daily basis, that means between 35 and 50 problem gamblers a day take their life from this addiction. Is that a surprise? It shouldn't be, because we know that losses can accumulate quickly. And for high-risk people, such as our veterans or minorities, I expect that they make up the highest percentage of those loss of lives. That's one of the reasons that I advocate as strongly as I do today. I don't want to see people become a statistic. Lives matter, just as words matter. Bill talked about the reduction in stigma, and it takes me back to last year at the conference when I did an interview with NBC4 in Columbus. And the interviewer, we spoke for about 15 minutes probably, and it was condensed down to a couple of sound bites, but it was what he opened his comments with that bothered me the most. And it just goes to show you about that swimming uphill sometimes. It's baby steps. We have to continue to educate. He did the interview, and we talked a lot about reducing stigma and reducing harm. And I really thought that, you know, he related and we got it. And he goes out and he opens the interview by saying, I spoke with an addict earlier. And that's a word that we don't want to be using, because it does stigmatize. And it just goes to show you how far we still have to go. It's gotten better, but there's still room for improvement. I believe an advocate's role is defined only by those who seek to limit their participation. I believe we have a distinct advantage, in fact, in the fact that we have lived experiences, whether they're direct or indirect. No one knows problem gambling better than another problem gambler. I have had numerous people come to me first before they would even consider going to speak to a counselor, for the simple fact that they just needed someone that they felt could relate to them, could understand them, could guide them in the direction that they needed to go. And we can provide that much. We can't treat them, but we can certainly assist those in counseling and prevention and treatment. and getting those clients to you. That's one of the reasons that when I joined PG&O and was on the board of directors, that I was really proud of contributions towards the Warm Transfer Project to get individuals help quicker. In other words, they didn't call the helpline on a Friday night and have to wait till Tuesday to talk to someone. Because we know that when you're in crisis, you need help immediately. You don't need to be waiting 3 days or 4 days to talk to someone. The helpline can give them the basics and try to calm the situation. But until Warm Transfer came in, I have to admit, I was a little uncomfortable knowing that an individual could wait 3 or 4 days before they were able to speak to someone at an agency about the problem, because we know that as time goes by, the less likely they are to follow through. And if their mindset was one where suicide was an ideation, but they wouldn't admit to it, I had concern that some of those individuals could be lost. So that's why I fight the way I do. Recovery is a long, hard road. I've got nearly 5 years in, but I know that, as Bill said, it's one day at a time. Not every day is easy, but it's certainly the alternative to the life that I did have. The last 5 years has probably been the best that I've had in my life. And I'm just glad that I'm still here today. One of the things that I try to make sure when I'm talking to someone who has a potential problem, I want to make sure to remind them that there's more to life than just gambling. Their life has more meaning and value than they give themselves credit for. I remind them that they are not alone in this, that help is available to those who truly want it. And if they fall, that I'm willing to be there for them when they try to stand again and fight this illness for however many times it takes to achieve success. While others might see failure as a sign of weakness, those who fail but rise to fight again show strength of character and courage. Nothing worthwhile comes easy. It sometimes exacts a heavy toll and price, but life is priceless, and it's worth the cost of success. I want to close by reading something that I came across, and it just goes to show that even from the earliest founding of our nation, many of our great universities were founded partly through gambling resources. The lottery, universities such as Yale, many Ivy League schools in particular. So is problem gambling really new in the fact that people are recognizing it for what it is, finally, after all this time? And it still has a way to go. We haven't reached very many when you really look at it. Ohio does a lot more than most, and I'm proud to be a part of this state. But our first president of the United States in 1783, George Washington, quote, said, "Gambling is the child of avarice, the brother of iniquity, and the father of mischief." Avarice meaning greed, iniquity meaning wickedness, mischief meaning crime. And we all know that it can lead down that path. So what does it say to our youth? Well, obviously gaming is a huge thing amongst our youth today. And if you're a parent or you have children or grandchildren that does a lot of youth gaming, be aware of the games that they're playing and how much they're playing. Benjamin Franklin said, keep flax from fire and youth from gaming. If people like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin knew all those years ago and all those centuries ago, how can we not know? How can we not see this addiction for what it is? I'm an advocate, and the specific reason I'm an advocate is to make people see, to try to prevent a heartache before it happens. Thank you to everyone that's here today. Thank you for the efforts that you put in gambling and treatment and counseling and prevention, and for just, being there for those who are in need. And I'm grateful to, Bill for sharing his story. He's been a good partner to work with the last couple of years. And thank you to just everyone at PG&O and ORG for making this Problem Gaming Awareness Month the best that I've been a part of in my 5 years in recovery. Thank you, Corey.
And thank you both. There have been a lot of great messages in the chat about thanking you both for sharing your story. And Bill, sorry for your loss. I'm sure that you've been tracking some of those. Before we start our Q&A, we have quite a few questions that have come in. But before we start our Q&A, I do want to launch another poll question for attendance verification purposes. We will use the poll question that Bill skipped on accident, but this will be for attendance verification. So please use this, engage with the poll question here. And I'll let that stay up for a few moments and we can begin our Q&A. Again, first, thank you so much for sharing your stories. I, for one, personally see a lot of value in persons and families in recovery advocating in this field. We do have a large number of peer recovery supporters and recovery advocates at the conference this year. My question is, where do you suggest that they start in their journey in not only supporting those in recovery, but also advocating for those in recovery as well? And that can be for Bill or for Jess.
Bill, you want to start with that?
Sure. Yeah, at least for my journey, it began with GA, and the what I found very surprising, and maybe it really shouldn't have been, it's because it's an anonymous program, it's somewhat hidden. But once you tap into it, it was very surprising to me to find out that you could find a GA meeting every night of the week or every day of the week. It might mean a drive. It might mean, sacrificing some routine things. But through GA, we learn a lot. In fact, I got a Gam-Anon book here. The point was that getting to know through Mike the gambler, the problem gambler, that there was a sister program, the Gam-Anon program, and just speaking with those people, putting my first foot and step onto the path of this very lifelong journey, hearing the stories, hearing that there can be setbacks, and with setbacks, you can just hit the reset button and start again. That was the most impactful, but I had to be open to it. I had to first get past the stigma of, okay, there's a problem and I need to confront it and I need to be outspoken. I can't hide this in the shadows and just tuck it away in the corner. Family and friends need to know, because without that, then there's no understanding. And so for me, it became an individual, or so we talked about, the personal advocacy, self-advocacy. That's where it really started, getting the ball rolling for myself. And it's been a very enlightening journey to find out how many resources there are, and that more and more people are now talking about it. And I think another blessing of the COVID period is that people have gotten closer together, and they've had to rely upon each other, and they've understood a little bit more of not everything is under our control, and we need to reach out to others and walk the journey together.
Well, I know I certainly agree with that 100%. It's, for me, it was when I went into treatment that I really found a cognizant sort of realization that not only can I not do this alone, but I needed the support of others. We did a lot of group therapy and things like that, GA meetings, of course, that we attended, just reaching, kind of going outside the box a little bit, learning how to, not focus just upon ourselves, but how we needed each other to provide support. And once leaving there, reaching outside, not only GA, but building a support network. I went as far as to encapsulate and surround myself with people, everything from my doctor, who was very supportive and understood addiction and the like. There's so many resources, as Bill said, that's out there now because of COVID and things that is available all the time. And I certainly, even though I've got 5 years into recovery, I still take part in weekly Zoom meetings and such recovery meetings, even through the treatment center that I went to. And it's been a great asset for me.
Had a few more questions come in. This one is particularly for Jess. In your opinion, why do you think that so few people with problems with their gambling seek and accept treatment?
Females, I believe, are more likely to accept treatment in general. For the males, a lot of times you're dealing with pride, you're dealing with ego, machismo, whatever you want to call it. And for whatever reason, they tend to be more protective of, I don't want to say their personality, but it's just something that's built up. It's like this tolerance level that they're willing to go so far, but not admit to certain things. They don't want to share their life story or their gambling history with a perfect stranger. And that's unfortunate. They may go to a GA meeting or try it out, but a lot of times they don't stay. And that's sad. That's one of the things in advocacy that I try to make sure that I tell them is, listen, you got to set the ego aside. You got to set the pride aside. The people that's going to counsel you, they're not going to look down upon you or anything. They want to help you. If you want to help yourself, then you need to take that step. They're more than willing to meet you halfway. This is a great state in which to get help. There's so many people that I've worked with the last few years here in Ohio that I would send them to in a moment. but they have to be able to get past that first initial phase of, I don't want to tell others about what I've done, or I don't want to tell others about my addiction and my problems. And that seems to be a bigger factor for men than women. Women seem to be more readily willing to share everything that they've gone through, men not so much.
And then Bill, a question for you. Can you speak a bit about how professionals can better engage with the GA community?
Yeah, this is definitely opinion. There's no science behind this. I think that 7 years ago when we lost our son, the networking and collaboration was, in my opinion, almost non-existent. It wasn't until we were raising funds and putting on training exercises for first responders that we began to have a better respect for what each other does. And I think that bringing together the professional realm, right, the counselors and the care providers, versus the public realm, which is in the anonymous world that's public, they were very separate. And they are both puzzle pieces that need to fit very closely together. And I think that just that communication has helped to build. Now, people are people. And I did see another question or a comment in here that someone had a very bad experience with either the helpline or with a virtual GA or Gam-Anon. I'll tell you, I've shown up, this is not a bad testimony, I've shown up at a Gam-Anon meeting and we were the only ones that were there. And my thought process, initially I could go to anger and say, hey, there's somebody supposed to be here and lead this. Well, I've been going enough to say, I'm that person who's supposed to be here. I didn't know how I would lead that or whatever, but if a counselor or someone had made a recommendation and there was no one there, it was just my time to be there. Thankfully, both my wife and I were there, and we didn't, we weren't confronted with something we couldn't handle. So I just think that that trust between the two, and understanding that the counselors can't be 24/7, and that the Gam-Anon and the GA meetings are a supplement to the client's treatment and path to recovery. So I think that's been, I hope I've answered the question. That's been my experience, and it's been, I stay involved because I'm seeing it continue to get better.
And Corey, if I could add to that, typically every gambling conference, we also have a GA and a Gam-Anon meeting that's included within the conference to give those that are involved in GA to Gam-Anon an opportunity to be with the community, but also for those that are interested in learning more about it, that opportunity to come in and their open meetings. We're not able to do that in this current environment, but hopefully as we get back to in-person settings, but even if not at a gambling conference, if there are open GA or Gam-Anon meetings, please attend. Please better understand what resources are available and what that process is, because we know that counseling isn't the silver bullet for everybody, that we need multiple strategies, and we know that there's the path to recovery is a winding one. So just help make those connections and really know what resources are available within your community.
Thanks, Derek. Another question. This isn't specified, so whoever wants to answer. Do you have any suggestions on how to use recovery advocates in treatment, particularly outpatient settings?
I'll jump in here, Jess, unless you got something burning. My experience is that I can offer to walk the path with that individual. And so I literally, and physically do a lot of walking and a lot of hiking, and I get around the state as a member of the Buckeye Trail Association. There's 1,400 miles on the perimeter, and I encounter a lot of people. Everybody has a burden, and way too many of them are suffering from some mild or severe problem, mental health problems, financial problems, gambling problems. Yes, I run into those folks. And it's very clear on my backpack and on my headgear, set before you bet. You see the things in the background here are shirts that I've acquired because they have a meaningful message to me. And I want to be, give an outward sign to anybody and everybody. I'm open to talk about it and willing to listen. And all too often, it's just listening, or to hand them a piece of literature, or to say, hey, there is a professional group and here's their number. At the opening of the conference today, Derek and Corey gave us a lot of great resources, and I use that, if not a daily basis, certainly a weekly basis with the folks that I encounter.
Well, for me personally, I've been one to be willing to work with anyone in order to get them into treatment, however they want to handle that. I'm willing to go with them, support them, talk to them. But again, my role is not to cross that invisible line that I like to put up, because they need to work the program, their treatment program, whatever it may be, for themselves. I'm certainly willing to be a sponsor or support them in any way I can if they need a friendly voice to talk to, or sometimes they may just want me to go to a first session or something like that. If the person on the other end is willing to allow that, then I'm certainly going to help that individual any way that I possibly can. I've given my cards out at past conferences. Even people from out of state have reached out and contacted me and say, would you consider talking to this individual? I'm more than willing to do that, because again, I'm trying to prevent heartache, whether it's for that individual or for a family member or a relationship or whatever it might be. And I'm willing to go as far as I can to help an individual. And if that means going to a treatment session, and I'll just sit there and, just listen and whatever it takes. But I won't cross that invisible line, because that's not my role, is to treat them. My role would be just to assist them in whatever way that I can.
Great. And Bill, I know that you can see the question for you in reference to self-care. Just for everybody else, in your personal journey of advocacy, were there times that triggered personal stress that you found a need to step back, to take time for self-care?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, the answer to that is it happens with oftentimes greater frequency than I'd like it to happen. But very early on, within the first year of our loss of Mike, I had made a conscious decision to embrace it. There are many options, right? It can run away with it, it can bury it. And having talked with so many folks on the journey, burying it, it will pop up in a negative form in one way or another. It will compromise relationships. It can cause health issues. So I decided to embrace that. And so, yes, to step back it's not a metaphor. I stepped forward. I have to fully embrace it. It means being in touch with my emotions. It means to be able to openly weep for myself, for the situation, for someone else. And that does, it's that, at least when I was still in the working environment, with great frequency, once a month, maybe more frequently than that. People that I worked directly with, and even those that didn't work directly with, it was a big organization. I didn't know everybody. Someone would come by and say, "Hey, could you, talk to me about this?" I opened up this morning with a song. Mike, our son Mike, I could say, was a lifelong resident. We moved here when he was in 3rd or 4th grade. And so that's all he knew was Cleveland. And so Michael Stanley was one of those guys that, shaped his musical world. And so that was my introduction to Michael Stanley, and my town. That's, there's a lot of pride. And I think stigma can erode pride. We can still, have these great and wonderful things, but we're imperfect. And so I have to embrace the imperfect part of me and get that self-care. My self-care treatment is to go out for a hike. And some people will laugh, okay, yeah, go out, walk around the block. For some, that's enough. I've embraced the challenges where I'm doing 20 or more mile hikes in a day. In fact, just this past Sunday, I did basically a Facebook walk in recognition of our veterans, that 22 veterans a day are lost to suicide. And so this was just to raise awareness. On March 21st, first day of spring, I walked 22 miles and raise funds, raise awareness for those veterans. And they are a big part of our problem gambling community, especially those that have come back damaged from the ravages of conflicts that they've been deployed to. And PTSD is a serious problem. I thank Heather Chapman and all the great work that she's done in so many areas of addictions in our veteran community. She's enlightened me tremendously. That knowledge is also self-care, self-help. I feel like I'm making an impact. So I embrace it. And so thank you very much for the question.
And then Jess, can you provide the amounts that were related to gambling amounts before 2020 and then after reopening in 2020? I think somebody missed those and wanted that data.
Sure, let me grab it here. Okay, for the months, let's see, at 2019 at full capacity, using all tables and slots, combined revenue of the 4 Ohio casinos was $278 million. And in 2020, during that same time period, with capacity controls in place, using 2/3 of the tables and 2/3 of the slots, the revenue was $310 million, an 11% increase year over year.
Thank you. And then Jess, can you speak for a moment about how about Gamban and how that helped you and support your recovery?
Well, basically, it just removes. We are on our phones and things so much nowadays, and tablets and all that. Gamban for like I said, $35. It basically blocks and removes all those unwanted ads and sites like DraftKings and FanDuel and the like. So it basically serves to take away any potential triggers and urges and temptations that might come through those formats. And again, it's all about, when you're in recovery from an addiction like this, it's all about removing those things from your life that led you down that path. You have to replace those things with something good. Replace the bad with the good. And this was just one way of taking some of those things out of the mix and being able to utilize that time and doing other things. And for me, it's been about advocacy. And just adding for a second to what Bill was talking about with the self-care, me as being in recovery for nearly 5 years, yeah, you hate to tell anyone no, that you can't assist them with something, but there are times when you do just have to take, as he likes to put it, a hike, a mental health day, when you have to put yourself first, even if it means saying no to someone.
Here, one more question here. What can the prevention and treatment community do to help encourage those who may need treatment or support those in recovery?
Jess, you want to handle that first?
No, go ahead, Bill. No, I didn't catch the whole question. I caught the tail end of it.
Okay. Well, Claire, thank you. That's a great question.
Let me look it up.
I think that it's, I'm looking for the question again too.
I can repeat it. What can the prevention and treatment community do to help encourage those who may need treatment or support those in recovery?
It's a risk. My suggestion, again, I'm not a professional, and I think this is on an individual basis. The prevention or treatment counselor, in working with their individual, I think it's helping to try to build trust and faith that it's okay to express that, you have a problem and that you're seeking help, that you are engaged in help and treatment, and to be able to stand firm on, as part of the words matter, I almost hate to say it, but it means we got to get over the stigma, which means embrace it. It's hard. I would tell you that of the hundreds of people that I have encountered, and maybe it's in the thousands now because it's been a while, there's only been 2 bad experiences where that I have had, and both my wife and I, of somebody saying, well, just get over it, just stop doing that. Yeah, I mean, it sounds simple, but that's not. So there could be, a bad experience, but I think that when you're honest and open about this, and that, hey, this part of my life is broken, but I'm working on it, you get a sense of healing, and that creates more hope. And to steal another tagline, hope helps heal. Again, to suppress it or to hide it doesn't help there. So I think the prevention treatment community need to say, you can trust your peers, you can trust your family, you can trust your friends. Go ahead and confide in them. You don't got to kind of spoon feed it, but that initial breakthrough, breaking the ice on a difficult topic, or to engage them, say, hey, I'm going to a meeting, but hey, there's another program that if you really wanted to support me on it, you could be engaged in a parallel path with me. And I think that improves a lot. I mean, I can't say that, I can't even say today that I'm a good advocate. I'm an advocate. I'm pretty outspoken on a lot of things and don't always agree. And sometimes I need to be recalibrated. I think, staying engaged can help. And so that I welcome people to come and challenge me, or to come to me for, hey, and then many have, they come, Bill, what was your story? I know you went through something. I don't know all the details. Sometimes they want to know the details. Sometimes they don't want to hear anything. It's just, I need somebody to listen to me. I think that the prevention and treatment community encourage people to break out of that inner circle to a broader circle. And that really helps to, I would consider, accelerating the healing process.
Yeah. If I can jump in, because that question I wanted to ask, and I think it goes off of that, Bill. You and Jess have both been very involved in PGNO, but you and your wife, who you mentioned, Andrea, have been extremely involved in the Cuyahoga Problem Gambling Coalition, the community coalition up in Cleveland, which she is now a co-chair of. You guys have been extremely involved in that over the past number of years. So I guess could you talk a little bit about just the importance of that, being involved in that? And I think that goes to a great answer to Claire's question about how can prevention be involved in helping people maybe find treatment or therapy. Because if a coalition is just built around preventionists and we're going out into the community, we might not have that same impact. So a goal is always to have recovery advocates at every meeting or every event that we do to get that story, but also you and other recovery advocates add so much to us that we just don't know, that we haven't experienced when it comes to language, when it comes maybe areas to focus on and things like that. So I think, how can prevention help get people into treatment? It's collaborating with folks like yourself who have that message to share. So when we do come across someone who might be struggling, they're hearing the message from someone who's been through it, and not just, not a clinician or a professional. It's not coming from a professional. It's coming from a more personal standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Well, from a more personal standpoint, you really triggered something else that was really important to me, at least in the first 2 years of my own grief recovery, was journaling. And so I found problem gambling, suicide, everywhere. I mean, I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't listen to music. I couldn't read the newspaper. Couldn't read the police blotter. These are problems that are happening every day in front of us. And so by kind of keeping track or being responsive to it, if I see a celebrity who makes light of something, if I'm watching a network or a streaming service that is seeming to promote some bad behaviors, I need to speak out about that. I either need to go back to the network and say, I object to this and I'm not going to support your products. I'm not going to support this. Need to get to the government and write letters and say, I don't support, these kind of activities. That's kind of behind the scenes. So when I spoke earlier about, one-on-one advocacy, but I think the broader advocacy is we need to stop glamorizing gambling because there are problem kids. So to at least say, yes, it's a form of entertainment. And I don't gamble. I mean, I don't find it entertaining either. So it's very different for somebody to say, well, that's because you don't like it. But I'm not saying eliminate it. I'm saying watch for the signs and what it can lead to. So that's why we stay involved. And like I said, we're very outspoken because when we see this as a problem. So our work in the Catholic Church is that they have gambling at many of their events, the summer festival circuit. Be aware that those go back to the statistics, 5 out of 100 people that are going to be playing here. This is a serious problem and an addiction. Do you have the resources available to recognize the signs and point those people in the right direction? Or are you just, continuing to support the problem? And it might seem like it falls on deaf ears, but like a woodpecker, he just keep pecking away. One day, it'll have an impact on one person. And it starts with one person, one day at a time.
Well said.
We had another question come in, and I'll leave this one for Derek. Is there a credential for gambling recovery advocates as there is for alcohol and drugs?
That is a great question. And the short answer is yes, it's the same one. So Ohio MHAS has peer recovery supporters where folks can get certified. And the requirement to become a peer recovery supporter, the primary requirement is that you've had lived experience of mental health or substance use issues, and gambling certainly is included within that. Sarah Dokar and I've had many conversations, as well as Gary Ganella, who's engaged as a counselor, but also in the peer recovery supporter realm. And I don't think Gary is on today, about really having more specificity for gambling because there's just nuances to gambling that may be different than substance use and mental health. Kind of the approach right now is get some structure related to the peer recovery supporter system through OMAS a little bit firmer, and then look at other specific gambling trainings or events that could come up to kind of help support that realm. So definitely there's been good conversation there, and I'll type some info or drop some information in the chat about the peer recovery supporter process and how to get certified through OMAS. But if you got additional questions, feel free to reach out to either me here or Sarah at OCAR, and I'll drop in OCAR's information as well. They're Ohio Citizen Advocates for Addiction Recovery that have been very involved in the peer recovery supporter process. So hopefully that helps answer the questions.